popular image of the Civil War soldier is that of a young man wearing blue or gray, standing shoulder to shoulder with his comrades and marching into a great battle. However, only a small portion of the soldier's life was spent in combat. Between the battles and marches were vast stretches of inactivity that were marked by three things: duty, drill, and diversion. The day begins at dawn with the bugler blowing reveille. At this, all the men rise from their tents and fall in for roll call. At this point, men are assigned to the various fatigue duties, manual labor that keeps the army running. This can include cooking, cleaning, building roads. In the cases of artillery or cavalry, this includes the care and grooming of horses. Another form of duty vital to the Army's existence was guard duty. Detachments of troops were stationed not only throughout the entire camp of the Army, but also at the far reaches of that camp, often only a rifle shot away from the enemy. Those troops not assigned to duty would stay in camp for drill. Drill is an essential part of the soldier's life. This is how he learns to handle his weapon, how to march in formation, and how to execute the various battlefield maneuvers that will be used in combat. Drill can be broken down into three various forms. Drill by the squad, in which a non-commissioned officer leads 6 or 8 men in practicing of maneuvers or the manual of arms. Drill by the company, in which a company commander or a captain leads up to 100 men in battlefield maneuvers. And then finally, drill by the battalion, in which all 10 companies of a regiment are formed on the parade ground and execute the vast sweeping maneuvers that come to mind when we think of Civil War battles. When not drilling or performing some other vital task for the Army, men had precious few forms of diversion with which to occupy their time. The most popular by far was reading and writing. Men were desperate for news from home or the outside world, and they got it from whatever source they could, whether it was an often read newspaper or a cherished letter from a loved one. Men could also be found playing cards or chess, or also involved in some of the various social clubs that were formed throughout the Army, whether it was Bible study groups, glee clubs, or drama troupes that would perform on special occasions. Whether he wore blue or gray, these are the activities that filled the soldier's life between the great battles that decided the fate of our nation.
"250 Union men of Everett Peabody's brigade are up early on patrol. For the past 3 days, their pickets had been exchanging shots with Confederates. Many worry it signaled a pending attack. But no one in high command had been convinced. That Sunday morning, within earshot of their camps, they find a monster lurking amidst the Tennessee timber. 9,000 Confederates spearheading a surprise attack. After the next 2 days at Shiloh, our nation would come to realize the true bloody cost of Civil War. By the spring of 1862, the Union's disaster in the East at Bull Run the previous summer seemed a distant memory, thanks to a string of victories in the West. In February, The Army and Navy under Union Brigadier General Ulysses Grant and Flag Officer Andrew Foote had worked together to capture Forts Henry and Donelson. Combined with the loss at Mill Springs, Kentucky, General Albert Sidney Johnston, the Western Confederate commander, was forced to move southwest, handing over Kentucky and much of Tennessee, including the crucial supply and industrial center of Nashville. Major General Henry Halleck, commanding the Department of Mississippi, ordered federal forces up the Tennessee River, a major conduit into the heart of the Western Confederacy. The Federals embarked in March, using 174 steamboats to ferry almost 40,000 men toward their eventual target, a now bustling junction in northern Mississippi. In this day, rivers and rails are the key means to move men and supplies quickly, and Corinth, Mississippi is a crucial southern rail link. It straddles the Mobile and Ohio Railroad and sat on the only line connecting the Atlantic and the Mississippi. And by mid-March, Grant's army was in position to capture it as they encamped around Pittsburgh Landing. His was a good defensive position. Waterways protected both flanks and their rear, and they were within 20 miles of Corinth. But Halleck, cautious, has ordered Grant to hold until the 30,000 men of Don Carlos Buell's Army of the Ohio arrives from Nashville. On April 2nd, Johnston learns that Buell's approaching column is near Savannah, Tennessee. It is an opportunity to strike his opponents while they are divided, and Johnston seizes it. General P.G.T. Beauregard, the hero of Fort Sumter and Bull Run, plans a very complex attack that attempts to coordinate Johnston's four corps. But rainy weather turns the roads into mush, delaying the attack. Believing surprise is lost, Beauregard urges retreat. Undeterred, Johnston declares, "Gentlemen, we will attack at daylight." Despite warnings, Union commanders are confident that Johnston's army remains at Corinth. General Grant headquarters across the river at Savannah, and few of the regiments manning what is to become his front lines had ever been in a full-scale battle. Johnston's intent is to turn Grant's left flank away from the lifeline at Pittsburgh Landing. But it's Grant's right that receives the first Confederate attacks as William Hardee's brigades advance on the camps of William Sherman's division. As late as 7 a.m., General Sherman remains unconvinced this is a general attack until rebel skirmishes from Cleburne's brigade kill his orderly and shoot him in the hand. Two of Cleburne's 6 regiments move around the swamp and get caught in a vicious crossfire. The intense fighting here is just south of a church with a Hebrew name that ironically meant place of peace, Shiloh. Despite initial resistance, the Union's lines are soon stretched thin. Benjamin Prentiss forms his 6th Division, including 12 guns on the Eastern Corinth Road. His untested ranks wither Gladden's brigade. But around 8:45, Confederate attacks force Prentiss to fall back. Many don't stop until they get to Pittsburgh Landing, leaving empty camps, hot meals, and all their belongings. Hungry rebels pause to eat and loot. An hour is lost as commanders, including Johnston, struggle to get these men moving again. Amidst the panic, Union defensive lines are patched together with anyone in shouting distance. And casualties and terrain unravel Confederate command structure. By mid-morning, the battle at Shiloh has become a soldier's fight. Alerted by the distant thunder of artillery, Grant departs for Pittsburgh Landing around 7:30. He orders Bull Nelson's division of Buell's army to begin moving down the river, but Nelson is unable to march until early afternoon. Grant also orders Lew Wallace's 7,500-man division to reinforce his lines, but a series of errors and delays turn a 2-hour march into 7. Neither will arrive before nightfall. Despite a sprained ankle after arriving at the landing, Grant rides the length of his battle line and rushes men and ammunition to his defenders. But until Wallace and the elements of Buell's army arrive, Grant will fight outnumbered. By 10:30 a.m., the Confederate onslaught starts to overwhelm Grant's right flank. Attacks push Sherman and McClernand back, first to the crossroads of the Purdy and Corinth roads, and then to Jones Field, a mile and a half from Pittsburgh Landing. Johnston succeeds in bending Grant's line, but in the wrong direction, toward Pittsburgh Landing, where the line can be shorter and stronger. With the Union right flank in retreat, entire Confederate regiments fall out of line to eat and pillage. This lull allows Sherman and McClernand to regroup and launch a ferocious counterattack. By noon, they've rolled over the unprepared looting Confederates. For the next 3 hours, Sherman and McClernand's determined stand will force Johnston to commit his last reserves and will occupy the entire western 2/3 of the Confederate Army. Confederate brigades on Johnston's right make repeated attempts to dislodge Stephen Hurlbut's division from a blooming peach orchard just south of a pond where the dying crawl for a final drink. By 2 o'clock, Hurlbut's line begins to give after Johnston personally rallies his brigades to attack en masse. Johnston had an old dueling wound that kept his right leg numb most of the time. He may not have paid much mind to the mini ball that severed his artery. By 2:45, Johnston bleeds to death. He is the highest-ranking officer to be killed during the Civil War. In Grant's center, the division of W.H.L. Wallace and the remnants of Prentice's ranks form a half-mile front and a thick overgrowth along an old wagon cut. 6,200 men and 25 cannon make the names of the places there: the Sunken Road, the Hornet's Nest, synonymous with bloodshed. Thousands of Grant's men have retreated in panic. Lew Wallace is missing, and Bull Nelson, Buell's lead element, is an hour out of Savannah. Low on options, Grant orders a new line of defense at the landing. Around 4, Sherman and McClernand, with depleted ranks and no fresh troops, fall back. Confederates pause their attack to get ammunition to the front lines. Sherman and McClernand reform along the heights of a rugged ravine. By 4 p.m., Hurlbut withdraws, forcing Prentiss to refuse his left flank. With Grant's right and left flanks in retreat, sounds of heavy fighting in the center draw Confederate brigades like a magnet. W.H.L. Wallace's outnumbered Federals put up a fierce defense from an overgrown thicket. Their intense fire thickens the air with whizzing metal. Rebels call it the Hornet's Nest. Brigadier General Daniel Ruggles pounds the Hornet's Nest with almost 60 cannon, the largest concentration of artillery on the North American continent up to that time. By 5 p.m., elements of 14 of the 16 Confederate brigades on the field surround the Hornet's Nest. Wallace and Prentiss start to withdraw. Then Wallace is shot in the head and left for dead. Over 2,000 men are captured. The day-long Federal stand waged all across the battlefield at such places as the Peach Orchard, Hornet's Nest, and Crossroads staves off total defeat and buys Grant another day to fight. Grant's army has fallen back 2 miles and incurred immense casualties. Heavy cannon fire from the Union timberclads Tyler and Lexington pesters the Confederate lines. Grant's last line on April 6th is formidable. Confederates must cross huge ravines at Dill and Tillman Branch. Stalled, the Confederates withdraw to the captured Union camps. Little effort is made to supply ammunition or reform their exhausted ranks. That night, a heavy rain moves in, soaking the living and the dead alike. Beauregard, now in command, believes Grant's reinforcements are not coming and sends a dispatch to Richmond proclaiming complete victory. In fact, the lead divisions of Buell's army had a hand in defending Grant's last line, and Lew Wallace's division finally arrives on the scene about dusk. Though these reinforcements had been spotted by rebel Colonel Nathan Bedford Forrest, no one in Confederate high command took any action. Handed his greatest setback since the war began, Grant vows to whip 'em at daylight. By 6 a.m., Grant has 40,000 at the ready, half of which are battle fresh. The weary Confederates number around 28,000. Despite their exhaustion and disorganization, when Grant's army moves to retake the field and drive the rebels back, Beauregard eventually manages a solid defense. Despite his savage counterattacks, he is forced back 2 hours later to a position along the Hamburg-Purdy Road. Ultimately, the Union numbers are too great for Beauregard's depleted ranks. At 2, he pulls back in retreat to Corinth. Grant does not pursue until the next day. Almost 24,000 men are killed, missing, or maimed in just 2 days. Shiloh is the bloodiest battle in American history up to that time. Despite winning Shiloh, Grant is vilified for the shocking losses and near defeat. Many demand his removal from command. President Lincoln refuses, saying, "I can't spare this man. He fights." In Albert Sidney Johnston, the Confederacy loses a prized leader. No general will fill his void in the Western theater. Beginning in May with Corinth, the Union Army embarks on a Western mission of conquest, with many more places to fall. Vicksburg, Chattanooga, Atlanta. The battlefield is quiet now, though a new fight is ongoing against the foes of time and progress. Nearly 4,000 acres of land have been preserved, most recently the site of the Fallen Timbers action. Once host to two of the bloodiest days in American history, Shiloh is now one of the best preserved battlefields of the Civil War, a sprawling living monument to the sacrifices made there 150 years ago.